Hi, I'm John with the Wood Ninja. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I've got a couple of items to go over real quick before we get into the video. I've had several requests for different types of projects. So if you want me to build a certain project, I've had people ask me to build Smurfs, cars, trains, automobiles, all sorts of things. Leave it in the comments below. I will read your comments. I'm not guaranteeing you that I'm gonna build out your project, but I will seriously consider it, okay? Also, 90% of the people that view my content are not subscribed. If you like what you see, you like the content, and you feel I've earned your subscription, please subscribe and like it and share your friends. All right, in this episode, we're gonna go over the first part of the bee table. It's not really bees, but they're wasps. About 300 yellow jacket wasps we have impregnated in a table. So stay tuned. Hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you later. Bye. All right, so one of the first things that I do is I take the wasp nests. These are not honeybee combs. These are actually paper wasp nests. And what I do is I want to mix some penetrating epoxy. The penetrating epoxy sets up in 5-10 minutes or so, and then I'm going to add some gold epoxy color to it. So I want to give it a good contrast with the other epoxy I'm going to pour it. So I put these paper wasp combs down, and then I'm going to impregnate them. I'm just going to soak them in that penetrating epoxy, and I'm using melamine. What's underneath them is melamine. So what I'm going to do is clean them all out. So I'm trying to get them clean, and then I put the epoxy in there. And there's some to the left you can see that I've already got done. And so I did some samples before I got here, so I know if it's going to work or it's not going to work. So here's how we do it. I put it on. I put it on the comb the best I can, and then a lot of times I'll dunk it into the penetrating epoxy. Then once it's there, I get another brush and I dust it, and you can see how much more gold actually stays onto it. So you see that? Once I dust it with the gold, man, does that really pop. So we do that with all these combs, and what that does is allow me, once that sets up, then it allows me to really work these combs back and forth. Like I'll grind them down, I'll sand the backs of them, I can change different heights on it, because the height is going to come into account here when I make the river inside of the table. And that will make a lot more sense here in a few minutes as we get through it. But you can see how much more gold stands out when I hit it with the dust. Look at that. Bam. Now you can see it. Now it really looks good. Before, it doesn't really, even though that epoxy has a lot of color in it, doesn't look like it until I dust it. So, and then I have a working time with that penetrating epoxy, because it will get super hot, and it will actually melt my little container there from Home Depot. And so what we do is we just dust it up. We keep dusting them. And then we set them on that melamine, and I just keep cleaning it up until it's time for me to, see, now it's hard. See, rock hard. Literally, those are like rocks. You can see that? Now I can shape them. I can take them over to the grinder. I can shape them, and I can do whatever I want to do with them. And see how that it kind of got like a bulge on there. So I'm going to grind the back of it. See how that's ground down? I actually did what I just showed you. Then I poured black epoxy in that, and look at that. Look at how the comb shows up. Really pretty cool. So here I am. I got this table, and I guess it's called flame maple, or that's one of the words, one of the terms that is used for it, but it's an ambrosia maple. And this was Remy. We called this Remy's table. It was my dog Remy's table. So it's a coffee table I had inside my house. And for whatever reason, Remy would love to just jump up my table and just lay there, and she thought it was her bed table thing. So after a while, it got some scratches in it. So I thought to myself, and I never kicked her off the table, by the way. I just let her do whatever she wanted to do. So what I thought, hey, let's do something special. I have to sand these dog marks off, the claw marks off. And I thought, you know what? Let's do a river table in Remy's table, and let's install these paper wasp nests. and I thought that'd be pretty cool. Let's see how that works out. So this is my process of building that. So I traced out what I wanted with a pencil. I went along the I tried to use wherever the grain went of the wood, I would trace that. Then I use a router and I take a little bit at a time off until I get it down deep enough where I can set those combs down in there. I need to set them all the way down. And the reason why I don't cut the whole thing off, then I don't need a form on the bottom. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the combs in there. I'm going to pour some epoxy, some black epoxy. So you see the gold and the black epoxy. That will look pretty cool. Then I'm going to install some LED lights. Now the LED lights are going to be, I'm going to have to also router the back side of this and put a cover plate on the back. And that you'll see that later. So the idea here is I'll form a river, a man-made river with the grain of the wood. Then once I can get all my combs down the way I want them, then I'll pour epoxy in there, a slow pour epoxy in black. And then once that cures up, I'll start installing the lights and the bees and all that stuff. Now, we call it the bee table. It's affectionately known as the bee table, but it's actually about 300 yellow jacket wasps. And that's approximately how many I put in there. I bought, I think, a little more than 300 wasps, and some of them don't all make the cut, but that's the way life is. Okay, now here you can see that's the first pass. That's nowhere near deep enough. So we're going to have to go back over that a few more times and see what I'm doing is I'm grinding those down so it'll set down inside of that river. So that's the good part. Once you get that epoxy in there, you can really work it. So and that's like a 40 grit belt sander right there. I mean, it takes down pretty quick. And all the machines I have, the one that I get hurt the most on is that belt sander. I have tore off more skin in that belt sander than anything else. Okay, so as you can see, I've got the proper depth in my river table, and now I'm slicing this thing down to where I want it with my cordless chop saw. I think it's a compound miter actually, and then I'll install those all the way through, and I'm just going to keep doing that until I feel comfortable where I want them, the layout and all that stuff. And it looks like I need to go down just a little bit more in that the river table. That's what it looks like. But you'd think this would be the easiest part, but it's really not. You have to take into account how it looks, the depth of those combs, and they have to still look good. You can't. And at one point here, I thought I should just cram them all tight like that together. I thought that would look good. And then when I had it all done, I was like, you know what? I need some black epoxy. I want to show a little bit of contrast. So in order to show contrast, I need to pull those apart. So right here, it looks like it's going to be a solid comb all the way through, but that's not really what happens. Actually, what I do is I pull these apart and I router out the bottom even more. So then we space it out. And yeah, it looks cool right there, but that's actually not what it winds up to do at the end. I'm going to space that out. All right. Try to avoid the multiple hours of recording of just sanding, but it's tough here. So what's happening here is I need to create like a river in my table to put things in there. I'm going to put the bees in there and the nests and all that stuff. So been using I've been trying to use this as much as possible, but what's happening is it's overheating a lot. Then I come back through there and then I'll start using my hammer that I made, my little chisel, all that stuff, and then I use either 50 grit, I think this is 40 here, some 40, some 50 grit, and then sanding that by hand here, going with the contours of the table. Now, it's slow as you go. I've been up since 3:30 in the morning, and it's 9 something, and I already made several passes a couple days ago on this thing, and I know I need it down deeper, and this is as deep as I think it should go, it needs to go. So anyways, let me see if I can get some more footage here. Then you can see here, I'm trying, and we need to get down to this level here, which is a lot different. But that once we get there, yeah, that's nice and smooth. And all right, so got a piece over here. Now this is kind of rotten over here, so this thing really works well here. We'll see how the pain keeps going. So we're back at the sanding, and this is a lot of hand sanding, and what you see here in the video is nothing compared to the hours that I got to enjoy of the alone time at sanding. It was a lot of interesting hours here, sanding back and forth, and more sanding. Anyways, I felt at the end of this, though, it actually looked like an actual river table. Even though it was a man-made river table, it looked like a live edge, because I went with the contours of the grain for the most part. And that's pretty much how that happened. Now, again, I had like a 2 steps forward, 1 step back. I always put stuff in there. If I like it, I'm going to go with it. And if not, I'll pull it back out. So I had a few iterations of putting in the comb and taking it out and spacing it out and cramming it together, in addition to all sorts of other things, and ruining my cordless router. I had to get another one because I smoked that one. So there's a whole bunch of different stuff, and there we go, suck out all that stuff. Now I'm putting up some forms. Now I only need forms at the ends because of how I routed the bottom. Now, so I always like to use painter's caulk and screws, and I'm using some melamine there. Now that melamine's black because I painted it, because I was painting something. I can't remember exactly what I was painting. I painted something black, and that's why it's black. But it's typically melamine's white. And what I do is I make sure that caulk is sealed, that end sealed up real good with caulk. Let it dry out, and try as we might not to get a leak. And I do the same thing to the other side, and I'm just trying to clean it up as much as possible. And I don't know how that epoxy finds a way through, but it will find a way. So I'll caulk under it, over it, and where they connect at every possible angle, and try to clean it out. So then we're going to use a few more batches here of penetrating epoxy. In this particular batch is what I'm going to do is I'm trying to seal up the wood on the bottom. And why we're trying to do that is because of bubbles. So if we can seal it, because that wood, the ambrosia maple is kind of porous, because ambrosia maple, is porous just by its nature. So if you can seal it up, you will get less bubbles. So that's my idea here. So I'm going to seal this all up with some penetrating epoxy, and then when I pour the slow pour epoxy over the top, the black, we're going to hopefully eliminate as much as possible the bubbles, because it will just ruin your project. It'll just ruin your project if you have too many bubbles and it just slowly leaks out. The problem is the slow leak of bubbles, because then it will be caught inside of the epoxy. If it was fast, bubbles come up fast, that's fine, because they'll come to the top and you can pop them with a heat gun. So this is a slow pour epoxy, and then we're using some black because I want to do a contrast. So this is the first thing I want to do is mix up, once that penetrating epoxy's on there, and that penetrating epoxy should set up within 5-10 minutes. It's pretty good at that. Then I put I do a small batch of slow pour or deep pour epoxy. I mostly use liquid glass. Now you can see I put it in there. I put the combs already in there, and then I put epoxy in there. I don't want to pour it inside of the combs. I'm trying to pour it around the outside, so I get a nice contrast between the gold and the black. And so far, so good. For once, this is kind of going the way I want it to go. And then I'm gonna check for level, because I want to make sure that it's not too high and they're staying down, because they're gonna want to float, and you don't think it's gonna float, but wood, and all sorts of different things will float. So you got to keep checking and making sure. See, that one's moving. And then I start putting blocks on them and making sure that it's down, because it's gonna want to move, and it's gonna want to float up, and I don't want it to come up. I want it to be down, because at the end, after I install all my Yellow Jackets, I'm going to pour a clear epoxy over the top, and then I want to sand that down. And if these things are up at the top, then it's not, you're not going to have it. You're going to have the comb to the top instead of the clear epoxy. So I'm trying to put some blocks of wood on and hold everything down the best I can. Here's just another angle. I think I did a couple of different pours just to make sure I had enough epoxy in there. Again, we're just going to clean them up. I think right now we're going to do some, we're going to install some of these little guys here. Now I used the penetrating epoxy on them because it sets up pretty quick. And so what I did is I dunk them in the penetrating epoxy. Then I set them in there with my tweezers. And it's kind of slow as you go, but that's just kind of how, that's why I signed up for. As you can tell, they don't want to set up exactly the way you want them. So you have to manipulate them into the position you want. And then you have so much time, because that epoxy is going to set up, and then you're going to be out of options once that starts setting up. So I'm manipulating it the best I can. If I don't have time, that bee's wasted. So you can see, here we go. And then we're putting her in there. There you go. So we want to make them as like as possible, so that's why we use epoxy. I thought about using super glue or CA glue, and I just don't think it looks as nice as the epoxy. Epoxy, I believe, is clearer. So and here I am checking, make sure the wings are below the top of the table. I want them in that in that groove. So we're just going to keep on dunking them. And I really like how the yellow banding on the thorax and abdomen look against that black. I think it looks really cool. Now it gets a little out of focus here because I think the camera's on my hand as opposed to the bee, but there you go. That just takes a little time, a little manipulation. And we're going to get those bees in there. You can see their wings, how their wings stick up like that. There we go. There we go. Yeah, just do this 300 times. That's all you got to do. It's actually more than 300, because there's a lot of failures doing this, because it's just a process, not because of anything else. And here I am just trying to fill them up, fill it all up. And most of the, I'd say half, I put half the bees on before I start drilling for the lights. So the lights are going to go on there, and that's what it looks like. Now, this is what it's going to look like closer to the end, and that's going to be in the next video. So I want you to like and subscribe. It really helps me grow my channel, and that's what it's going to look like. That's 4 o'clock in the morning, so it's dark outside, and I really appreciate everybody who stayed to the end. It means a lot to me. Thank you.